Indiana Fever, Kelly Crosskoff, Stephanie White, the Caitlin Clark fans have their eyes on you and a target on your back. All offseason, what have we been saying? We need size. We need a starting caliber 4. We need an adequate backup for an all WNBA center in Aaliyah Boston. We have Aaliyah Boston and then a bunch of power forwards who are not powerful.
Stop. Before you hear a single word out of my mouth, I need you to look at what just happened on that screen. Look at that. Look at how many empty seats are sitting in Gainbridge Fieldhouse on the night Caitlin Clark returned to her home court for the first time in nearly 300 days. Paige Booker's in the building. Azzi Fudd in the building. The most talked about player in women's basketball stepping back onto that floor after a season loss to injury. And the place was half full. Half full. That image right there is not just a preseason attendance number. That image is a verdict. That is an entire city of fans looking at this Indiana Fever roster, looking at the decisions made by this front office all offseason long, and saying I'll believe it when I see it. Well, they saw it on April 30th, and what they saw was not encouraging. My name is Dre Fiver, this is Street Hoops. And today, we are going all the way in on the Indiana Fever because the fans deserve someone to tell it straight. Let's get into it. Let's start by establishing exactly what was at stake in that preseason game against the Dallas Wings. This was not just any tune-up contest on the calendar. This was a preview, a direct look at the team the Fever are going to open the regular season against on May 9th at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Dallas and Indiana are going to line up against each other on the first day of the regular season, and what just happened in the preseason should have every person inside that Fever front office lying awake at night. Dallas won 95-80. That final score is bad enough on its own, but the scoreboard is only telling you half the story, and honestly, the half it is not telling is the more alarming half. The Dallas Wings out-rebounded the Indiana Fever 45-26. 45-26. That is a 19 rebound differential in a professional basketball game. Dallas pulled down 12 offensive rebounds to Indiana's 5. 12. That means the Wings were getting second chances, third chances, extra possessions, all while the Fever were watching the basketball clang off the rim and land in someone else's hands. And Dre's personal opinion on this? A 19 rebound deficit does not happen because of hustle. It does not happen because players were not trying hard enough. It happens because of roster construction. It happens because of a structural mismatch that the coaching staff and front office allowed to exist, and those decisions have names and faces attached to them. This is not bad luck. This is the bill coming due on choices made all off-season. Now, to be fair, and I'm always going to give you all sides on this channel, even when one side is inconvenient, the Fever were playing without Aaliyah Boston in that game. Her lower leg issue, which reportedly began during the unrivaled season, kept her on the sideline, and Aaliyah Boston is not just a starter, she is the backbone of this front court. According to her 2025 season numbers, she averaged 8.2 rebounds per game. She is one of the best rebounding centers in the entire wnba at her position. If you plug her into that box score against Dallas, the margin gets less catastrophic on paper. I get that. But let me explain exactly why that argument does not hold up as a defense of the front office's decisions. If your entire rebounding identity as a franchise is dependent on one single player, to the degree that removing her from the lineup produces a 19-board deficit against a team that did not even have Jessica Shepard available, then you are structurally broken. You are one injury away from complete dysfunction. And the Fever already learned that lesson the hard way last season when Clark went down for most of the year. They know what happens to this franchise when a star gets hurt. They lived through it. So the question is not would Boston have helped? Of course she would have. The question is, why was there no contingency plan if she didn't play? That question still has no satisfying answer. Look at the individual rebounding numbers from the Wings game, because the details matter here. Monique Billings, the veteran big woman who was supposed to be one of the front court additions this offseason, played 22 minutes and pulled down 3 rebounds. 3. That's 0.14 rebounds per minute from a player brought in specifically for her size and physicality. Michaela Timpson played 23 minutes and finished with 2 rebounds. Combined, those two frontcourt players, 45 minutes of floor time between them, could not combine for 5 boards. The one bright spot was Maisha Hines-Allen, who grabbed 7 rebounds in under 20 minutes and at least gave you something to work with. But Hines-Allen is a bench piece. She is a quality reserve. She should not be the load-bearing wall of your rebounding operation. And the most damning detail of the entire night, according to reporting from High Post Hoops, a 5'9" guard from the Dallas Wings out-rebounded multiple Indiana Fever frontcourt players. Read that back. A guard, 5'9", walking into your house and snatching boards away from your bigs. That is not a preseason blip. That is an X-ray of a structural fracture, and this is where the conversation about Damiris Dantas becomes impossible to avoid. I want to be measured here, because Dantas is a professional and a human being, and the frustration fans feel is directed at roster decisions more than any individual player. But the facts are the facts, and the facts are not kind. According to FOX Sports, Dantas averaged 4.6 points per game in 2025 on 34.8% shooting from the field. She connected on just 26.3% from beyond the arc. Her rebounding average was 2.4 boards per game for a frontcourt player. Her plus-minus for the season was a negative 37. Negative 37. And as noted by Bleacher Nation, she missed training camp in consecutive years. 2 years in a row. Whether that was for visa issues, personal reasons, or anything else, the pattern is undeniable. You are not showing up to camp on time, and your production when you do show up is not matching what the Fever need from a frontcourt piece in a win-now moment. The fan base has been screaming about this for the better part of 2 years. They are not wrong. And Dre's unfiltered opinion, the Damiris Dantas experiment at this level of investment and at the expense of this roster spot is finished. It needed to end. The fact that she is still in the conversation at all is a testament to how much organizational inertia can work against a team's best interests when decision makers become attached to familiar faces. You brought her back. She gave you a negative 37 plus minus. It is time to move on, and the fan base's fury about her continued presence on this roster is completely justified. Now, the Justine Passat situation adds another uncomfortable layer to all of this. Passat has been floated as a potential frontcourt contributor, a piece of the internal solution to the size problem. But she publicly pushed back on the media narrative surrounding her injury, essentially telling the world that what the Fever's own apparatus was putting out publicly did not reflect her actual situation. When a player feels compelled to go on record and distance herself from her organization's messaging about her own health status, that is not a communications misunderstanding. That is a fracture in internal trust. That matters. That tells you something about the environment inside that building, and it raises serious questions about whether Passat can be reliably counted on to contribute the minutes that this front court desperately needs. So now we get to the name that has been lighting up wnba social media for the past 72 hours straight. Cameron Brink, the second overall pick in the 2024 wnba draft out of Stanford University. 6 feet 4 inches tall, elite defensive instincts, genuine shot blocking ability, and a motor that the Sparks' own general manager Reagan Pebley praised publicly during Media Day this week. According to Clutch Points, the Los Angeles Sparks have already exercised their 4th-year contract option on Brink for the 2027 season. Let that land for a second. The Sparks are in enough of a win-now mode to be making bold free agency moves, and yet they still exercise that option on Brink. That tells you exactly how much they value her. That tells you this is not a player Los Angeles is dangling at a discount, but the Cameron Brink story has layers, and if you're going to have this trade conversation honestly, you need to understand all of them. Her first year in the league was legitimately promising. According to RotoWire, she averaged 7.5 points, 5.3 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks per game over her first 15 NBA appearances as a rookie, before suffering a devastating torn left ankle in mid-June that ended her season. Gone. Just like that. One of the most anticipated young careers in the league's recent history, cut short before it could really breathe. She missed the first half of the 2025 season, continuing her recovery, finally returning in late July and appearing in 19 games exclusively off the bench, averaging 5.1 points, 4.3 rebounds, and 1.4 blocks in just 12.8 minutes per night according to StatMuse. She also led her team in blocks per game despite those limited minutes, which tells you everything about where her defensive impact lives even when her overall game is still ramping back up. Now heading into 2026, she is fully healthy. She spent the offseason focused entirely on basketball, not injury recovery. Per Clutch Points, Sparks GM Pebley specifically noted during Media Day that Brink has been able to quietly build confidence because this offseason has been about hoops and nothing else. She played unrivaled this past winter. She is ready. And as RotoWire's scouting notes put it, at her absolute best, Cameron Brink is an elite defender capable of competing for the Defensive Player of the Year award. That is the ceiling we are talking about, and the Indiana Fever need her. Let's talk about what this roster actually looks like if you pull this trade off, because the basketball case is not just good, it is genuinely exciting. Picture Cameron Brink at the 5, slide Aaliyah Boston to the 4. Now think about that for a moment. Boston is a South Carolina product who spent her college years operating as a power forward. Her game, the high post passing reads, the face-up shooting, the physicality in the mid-range, translates beautifully to the 4 position at the professional level. You are not asking her to do something foreign. You are letting her play a version of her natural game with a true rim protector behind her. Meanwhile, Brink at the 5 gives you shot blocking, rim deterrence, and the length to protect your paint in a way this Fever roster currently has zero ability to do. On defense alone, that frontcourt pairing transforms Indiana from a soft switch-happy outfit into something that elite offensive teams actually have to scheme around. And then offensively, think about what Caitlin Clark does in the open floor. She is a generational playmaker. She pushes pace, she reads the defense before most defenders even realize what is happening, and she delivers passes with surgical precision. Now put Cameron Brink running the lane ahead of her in transition. A 6'4" forward with length and hands, finishing at the rim in a 2-on-1 situation created by the best point guard in women's basketball. That is not just a highlight. That is a consistent, repeatable offensive weapon that would make Indiana nightmarish to guard. You would be asking opposing coaches to defend Clark's pull-up, defend Kelsey Mitchell coming off screens, defend Aaliyah Boston in the post, and simultaneously contain a Brink, who is sprinting the floor and establishing deep post position. Good luck drawing that up on a whiteboard. You could manage their minutes intelligently, always keeping one of Brink or Boston on the floor so teams can never go small against you without consequence. The Fever already have a Kelsey Mitchell who will demand a defensive resource on every possession. They have Sophie Cunningham, who has carved out a real role as a physical wing. They have Raven Johnson, who is already being praised for her defensive instincts coming out of South Carolina. Put a real front court next to all of that, and this team stops being a contender on paper and starts being a contender on the actual basketball court. So what does a realistic trade package look like? This is where the debate inside the fan base gets loud and the opinions start flying in every direction. The obvious centerpiece of any package going to Los Angeles has to be Damiris Dantas. Her contract has value as a tradable asset even if her on-court production has been underwhelming. She is a proven professional with wnba experience, and the Sparks, who are trending toward a more competitive posture, might want a veteran body, but Dantas alone almost certainly does not move this needle. The Sparks exercised a 4th-year option on Brink. They believe in her future. They are not going to trade a player they view as a cornerstone for one rotation piece that has put up a negative 37 plus minus. That means the Fever are going to need to add draft capital. A first-round pick attached to a Dantas deal changes the conversation meaningfully. Maybe you are looking at Dantas plus a first. Maybe it is Michaela Timpson, who has athletic upside but has not turned it into consistent production, plus a draft pick. Maybe the Sparks want something that includes both depth pieces and assets. The exact shape of the deal is unknowable from the outside, and Dre is not going to sit here and pretend I have a source inside both front offices. What I do know is this: whatever the asking price is, the Fever have to at least pick up the phone. They have to at least start the conversation. Because sitting on your hands while you're rebounding is getting destroyed by teams you plan to compete against in the playoffs is not a strategy. That is organizational paralysis masquerading as patience. There are other names circling this conversation too. Kalani Brown, a legitimate 6'7" center who has bounced around the league, is a free agent option who costs nothing but a roster spot. If the argument against a big trade is asset preservation, then bringing in Brown and cutting Dantas is the minimum viable version of this move. Does that get you Cameron Brink? No. But does it at least give you genuine size off the bench to stop the bleeding on the glass? Yes. And that is better than running it back with the exact same problem that just got you beat 45-26 in a preseason game. Now let's zoom out for a moment, because the larger context here is critical. The Indiana Fever went on a stunning postseason run in 2025, despite playing most of the year without Caitlin Clark. They beat the Atlanta Dream in the first round. They pushed the Las Vegas Aces all the way to a Game 5 in the semifinals. They fell short of the finals, but they proved that the supporting cast around Clark has genuine competitive teeth. That matters. Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and the system Stephanie White is building around defensive discipline and pace, those are real things. This is not a franchise rebuilding from scratch. This is a franchise that needs 1 or 2 targeted additions to go from dangerous to dangerous and deep enough to win a championship. But the window is not infinite, and this is the point I keep coming back to. Caitlin Clark is 24 years old. She has been in this league for 2 seasons and has already missed the better part of one of them to a groin injury. Her health, her availability, and her peak production years are the most precious resource this organization possesses. Every season that ticks by without the right supporting cast around her is a season that does not come back. Championship windows in professional sports do not stay open indefinitely. You have to push through them when they are in front of you. And right now, that window is open. The Fever have the quarterback. They have the infrastructure. They are one frontcourt piece, one real, true, size and blocks frontcourt piece, away from being genuinely scary to every team in this league. Amber Cox, as the general manager of this franchise, knows this. Kelly Krossoff as team president knows this. Stephanie White as head coach knows this better than anyone, because she is the one drawing up game plans and staring at that rebounding differential, wondering how she is going. To keep her defensive principles intact when the opposition is getting 5 extra possessions a game off the offensive glass. The entire organization understands the problem. The question is whether they have the conviction to solve it before the regular season starts revealing the same flaws, except this time with stakes attached to every game. And let's talk about Stephanie White directly for a moment, because she deserves honest scrutiny here too. White has built her reputation on defensive principles. That is her calling card. That is the identity she wants this team to carry. But defense in basketball is not just X's and O's on a whiteboard. Defense starts with securing the defensive rebound. Defense starts with refusing to give the opponent a second bite at the apple after a missed shot. If your team gives up 45 rebounds in a single game and surrenders 12 offensive boards, your defense did not hold. Period. It does not matter how disciplined your rotations are, how well you guard the perimeter, or how many pick and roll coverages you have installed. If the other team is getting extra possessions, your defensive system is failing at its most fundamental level. And according to the reporting from High Post Hoops, this pattern was not limited to the Wings game. Indiana also lost the rebounding battle against the New York Liberty Inn, their first preseason outing, by a 27-34 margin. 2 games, 2 rebounding defeats. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. White was quoted after the Wings game indicating she felt her team lacked urgency on the court. She is right, but a coach's responsibility is not just to identify the problem after it manifests. A coach's responsibility is to advocate loudly, publicly if necessary, for the roster pieces needed to prevent that problem from recurring. I want to see the same energy from White in the front office that she clearly brings to the practice floor, because if she is sitting in those organizational meetings and politely accepting a roster that cannot rebound, she is not serving her players or her team's championship. Aspirations. The regular season opens May 9th against Dallas. The same Dallas team that just physically dominated Indiana from tip to final buzzer, that out-rebounded them by 19, that scored 36 points in a single quarter when the starters were going head-to-head. The schedule is not giving Indiana a warm-up period. There is no grace. There is no runway. The Cowboys are coming back to the same building in 5 days from this recording, and if the Fever step onto that floor with the exact same frontcourt construction, they are going to get the exact same result. And this time, it will count. Here is exactly where I land after all of this, and I am going to be as direct as I can possibly be. The Indiana Fever have a generational talent in Caitlin Clark. They have an all-wnba center in Aaliyah Boston. They have an elite scoring guard in Kelsey Mitchell. They have the infrastructure of a championship contender, and they are currently squandering pieces of that window by refusing to address a front court problem that has been visible and documented since the beginning of the offseason. The fans saw it. The media saw it. The preseason box scores confirmed it in plain numbers that require no interpretation. 45-26, that is the receipts. Cameron Brink would transform this roster. Her combination of size, shot blocking, defensive versatility, and the vision to run the floor in Clark's offense would give Indiana a dimension they simply do not have right now. The Sparks have exercised her option through 2027, which tells you the asking price will not be nothing. But it also tells you she is a player worth paying for. You do not protect someone's contract options unless you see a future with them, and if the Sparks see a future with Brink, then every other team in this league should be on the phone trying to change that calculation. Indiana should be leading that conversation. Amber Cox, Kelly Krossoff, Stephanie White. The fans are watching. The fan base that fills Gainbridge Fieldhouse and sells out this building and has made Caitlin Clark one of the most commercially significant athletes in American sports right now. They are watching too, and as of April 30th, 2026, they were watching from half-empty seats. That should scare you more than any preseason box score, because a half-full building for Caitlin Clark's home return after 300 days away means the faith is starting to erode. It means the goodwill this franchise earned from that playoff run is not inexhaustible, and the fastest way to restore it is to make the kind of bold, decisive move that tells your star player and your fan base that you are serious. Not paper serious, not press conference serious, basketball serious. Go get Cameron Brink. Or find the next best version of that answer, but do something. Do it now. Because the window does not wait. That is Street Hoops, and that is where Dre Fiver stands. Not going to sugarcoat a single thing on this channel, because that is not what you came here for. If you are new here, welcome to the family. We call it exactly like we see it, every single time. Now hit that like button right now. It takes 2 seconds and it tells YouTube that this content is worth putting in front of more people who deserve to hear the truth about this franchise. I want you in the comments right now. What is your trade package to get Cameron Brink to Indiana? How much are you willing to give up? Drop it below. Let's get that debate going. Subscribe to Street Hoops if you have not already. Tap the bell so you never miss a video, and I will see you in the next one. Dre Fiver, signing off. Let's go.